I welcome all councillors and staff members to the council meeting due to have started at 23rd February at 2 p.m, but a bit late because of electronics. And I acknowledge country. Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to the land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, present today we've got a full complement of councillors. Councillor Breeny, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Browning, Councillor Churchill, Councillor Simons, Councillor Arnold, Deputy Mayor Jenny Woods and myself, Robert Young, Mayor. And we have present our General Manager, our Executive Officer Jasmine Murray and our Consultant Planner Michael Purvis. Are there any apologies that are not noted? Well, no apologies. Item 1.4, late reports. No late reports?
Yes.
Was about
Yes.
two? Please mention the late reports.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are three late reports.
Are
on the
they
agenda.
item?
Item 7.6,
Yes,
the appointment of the emergency management coordinator roles.
yes,
Item 7.7, the Code of Conduct panel determination report. And item 7.8, replacement of fleet vehicles.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And are there any declarations?
We've got to accept these. So I'll move that to have late agenda item 7.6 included in the February 23rd council meeting agenda.
Can we, do
Second.
I have a second? Thank you very much, Councillor Breeny. Any discussion? All those in favour? Declare it carried unanimously. What about item 7.7 and 7.8? Do we have a motion for those?
So I'll move, Mayor, if you like, to have 7.7 included as late agenda item in the February 23rd council agenda.
Councillor Robinson, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. There's item 7.8, the replacement of vehicles.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that council accepts agenda item 7.8 as a late agenda item, the replacement of fleet vehicles.
Thank you very much, Councillor Arnold. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Breeny, thank you very much. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? I declare it carried unanimously. Are there any declarations of interest or conflict?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm declaring a potential conflict of interest in agenda item 4.4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Arnold, any other? Councillor Breeny?
Churchill.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Churchill?
I wish to declare a conflict in item 4.3.
Thank you very much. Any other?
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
Deputy Mayor.
I'm declaring a perceived pecuniary interest in item 4.2.
Thank you very much. Any others? Now, the next item on the agenda is confirmation of minutes. Do I have a motion? Councillor Breeny, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on Tuesday the 19th of January 2021 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Second, thank you, councillor Arnold. Any discussion? All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried unanimously. Next item is 2.2, date and purpose of workshops held. Do I have a motion? Thank you, councillor Robinson.
I'd like to propose that council notes the information.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Churchill. Any discussion? All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare it carried unanimously. Next item, let's have a look. I think it's item 3, is it not?
Public question time?
Pardon?
Public question time?
Yes, public question time, item 3.
Mr Mayor?
Yes,
Have we looked at the noting the information for the workshop held on Tuesday, the 16th of February 2021?
I don't think we specifically mentioned it, but it was a general motion. But if you require another motion, I'm quite happy that we, Councillor Bruni, please put one.
Well, through you, Mr Mayor, they were both dealt with under the same
Thank you.
item 2.2.
Yes. Item 3, thank you very much for raising that in any event, Councillor Bruni. Public question time. Questions, it's item 3. There's a question without notice. I'll read the question from Mrs Debbie Skeggs. My public question time question is in regards to the letter Dr Naidu has sent to his patients. Question 1. Why did the council fail in progressing with the statement shown below? Below there's a statement which reads, I had hoped to continue caring for you under a reformed structure, but despite my efforts, that opportunity has not eventuated.
I can respond.
Yes, I hand over to the General Manager. You want to read the response?
So the response, thank you, Mr Mayor. The response to that question is discussions have been had over several years between Glamorgan Spring Bay Council and Dr Naidu in regards to a reform structure. Full stop. Unfortunately, an agreement or agreements hasn't been reached.
Thank you very much. Item 3.3, questions on notice. There's a question on notice from Dr Robin Moore. Does the council wish me to read the question out loud? No. There will be a response from our General Manager, and there's a question on notice from Mr Jon Kickett. Likewise, I won't read it out loud, it's in the agenda, and there will be a response from the General Manager. Now, item 4 is the Planning Authority section. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meetings Procedures Regulations 2015, that I hereby declare that the Council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use and Planning Approvals Act 1993 for Section 4 of the agenda. Can I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Simons. A seconder?
That council now acts as a planning authority at 2:17.
A seconder? Councillor Arnold. Any discussion? Well, I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Now, there's an item 4.4 is withdrawn by council with the consent of the applicant. I'd ask that be noted.
Mr Mayor, could we note therefore that my potential conflict of interest no longer applies?
Thank you very much. councillor Arnold. Now, item 4.1, report on application for planning scheme amendment and planning approval of 12371 Tasman Highway, Swansea. Is there a motion? Councillor Browning?
I move that council, pursuant to Schedule 632B of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993 and Section 33(3) of the former provisions, initiate Amendment 0121 to Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015 to A, insert particular purpose zone 8 Tempest Village, and B, rezone part of Kelvedon 12371 Tasman Highway, Swansea, as shown by lots 50 and 100 on the proposed plan of subdivision and compromised in the CT volume 177646 folio 1, CT volume 240461 folio 1, and CT volume 102376 folio 1, from significant agriculture to particular purpose zone 8 Tempest Village. C, incorporate the document Tempest Integrated Impact Assessment 19 August 2020 into the scheme, and certify that the amendment 0121 meets the requirements of Section 32 of the former provision of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, and in accordance with the former Section 38(1)A of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, determine the period for public exhibition to be 42 days, and provides delegation under Section 6(3) of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 to the General Manager and Director Planning and Development to submit a report to the Tasmanian Planning Commission pursuant to former provision 39, where no representations are received, to notification of the amendment. 5, pursuant to Section 43F of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015 Development Application 2020-080 to subdivide, develop and use Stage 1A of the Tempest Village at 12371 Tasman Highway, Swansea, CT 240461/1, CT 177646/1 and CT 102376/1 be approved subject to the following conditions 1 through 64M.
Thank you very much for that mouthful, Councillor Browning. Is there a second? Councillor Churchill. Is there any discussion on the matter? Yes, Councillor Browning.
I'd just like to say it's taken me, with the help of our planners, and a long time to come to understand that Tempest development and how it'll work for our community. And I think that the extra 14 days for the public exhibition will allow our community time to work through the Tempest development and be able to come to, a decision about what they think about it. And I'm hopeful that it will create job opportunities for many and varied occupations within our municipality, and that more money will be spent in our towns helping the economy. And our planners and the proponents have worked in a collaborative and productive way to, with a result that I think will work for our community.
Does anyone else wish to say anything? Yes, councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to support those words of Councillor Browning, and just wanted to say that the process appears to be very appropriate for the rezoning and the DA that's come with that. We seem to know, in this case, what is going to be the purpose of this whole development, if and when it occurs. I'd also want to say that I think with the Tasmanian Planning Commission being the ultimate body here, the community has a very good opportunity to get their representations, hopefully both for and against this proposal, through the right processes, and the community will be brought into this decision enough to either validate it or reject it. And I would hope I can see benefit to community here if it all proceeds as we are told it will, and I would hope that it will proceed. Thank you.
Is there any discussion or comment against the proposal?
Oh, no, not necessarily against, Mayor.
If I could deal with against. Anyone against the proposal? Councillor Arnold, if you wish to say something, please.
I just have a question
Please,
for the planner.
please.
So through you, Mayor, to the planner. There has been considerable discussion on the matter of potential land use conflict, and it's referred to in various documents. Will condition 3B protect the significant agriculture / intensive horticulture that occurs in that area from a requirement for alternative protection from birds and browsing animals? And further, does it afford the neighbouring vineyard with protection from noise complaints when using their equipment? If there's any doubt at all, then I believe this condition may need strengthening to protect the agriculture activities that adjoin that property.
Mr. Purvis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Arnold. Condition 3B basically requires an agreement to be reached on the title for the operators and occupiers of the residences that will result from this decision. Protections for their rights to live in that location and for the operation of the adjoining vineyard and other agricultural activities are provided under other legislation. So while we could beef the condition up, I suspect that at law those improvements would be challenged and could be overturned. So I have used this type of condition in other circumstances in other council areas, and it has functioned as intended to provide a reminder to occupiers and users of those facilities that they do live in a rural area and that they cannot expect a normal residential amenity. So I don't know that we could provide legal guarantees, but this does as much as we can through the planning permit process.
Okay.
Have I answered your question?
You have indeed. Thank you, Mr. Purvis.
Any other-
very, very much appreciate it.
Any other questions? Well, yes, please, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to our Mr. Purvis. It's on page 15, 3 from the bottom. The current application includes new access to Tasmanian Hod constructed to Department of State. Sorry. What I'm actually going to ask is, given the fact that there's going to be 140 units plus other activities on this site, how do Taswater say that there will be no strain, extra strain and pressure put on an already problematic water catchment, like the Swansea water, the dam, and that's without other buildings being built within the Swansea area and no infrastructure improvements?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. The way that the planning process is set up, applications and planning scheme amendments are referred to TasWater, and they issue something called a SPAN, which is one of the many, many documents provided as an attachment to this particular agenda item. And that is TasWater's certification that they say the system has capacity. If we have, or you have, concerns over the ability of the reticulated water system for the overall settlement, I suggest that's probably a separate issue for council to make a motion and resolution on, because the statutory process has been fulfilled and TasWater have advised you they think the system does have capacity.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? I do ask any, Councillor Bruni, I'll get it right this time, not Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question for our planning senior planner advisor, simply because both of the questions that I have just been answered in relation to condition 3B and also in relation to the supply of services to the proposal. According to the advice, this application for the planning scheme amendment is worthy of consideration by the Tasmanian Planning Commission. And the thing that I think is unique with this, different to some previous developments of a similar nature, is that included in the application and integral to it is an agreement by the proponent to include stage 1A of the proposed development, so we know exactly what's happening underneath the umbrella of the specific area plan or the proposal. It's linked to the planning scheme amendment, so we know exactly why the amendment is required. That part of it is clear to me, and I was most concerned about the issue of I've been looking at some of the representations, and one in particular of the neighbour, the agricultural and primary industry use next door to this property. And it seems to me that although I can understand the problem in relation to the owner of the adjoining property being concerned about his rights with regard to primary industry and agriculture, I'm hoping that the proponents are just as diligent in notifying the people who are going to be utilising this development of the fact that they do have some constraints as to understanding that they don't live in an urban residential area, and that the agricultural uses nearby could well have a detrimental impact on the amenity from time to time. That was the concern of the adjoining owner, the agriculture, the farmer, and hopefully the condition B that you state that the consultant planner has indicated will be part of the title will cover that concern. What I do expect and what I would be concerned about is that council knows very well that regardless of those controls, council staff constantly get complaints about things like gas guns, about vermin control, about noise, etc. That and they assume that simply because they think that it's a nuisance that they can complain about it and have it stopped. Whereas in fact, if it's permitted under the legislation that covers agriculture and primary industry, then there's nothing that can be done about it. Unfortunately, council keep getting told that they should do something about it, which we can't. I think it's important for us to be aware that this proposal may well need to be carefully considered in relation to the issue of the conflict between primary industry and agriculture and semi-urban or peri-urban residential use.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comment to make? If it's permitted, I'd like to say something. The matter raised by Councillor Arnold and elaborated on to some extent by Councillor Brownie are things that exercised my mind about this proposal. And I thought about the two somewhat competing interests, both are beneficial to the community. And I thought about the question of an airport. If you buy a block of land right next to Tullamarine, say, airport, and build a house on it, you can't complain about the aircraft noise because the noise and the use of the adjacent property has been going on for a long time. It's a well-established principle of law. And there is the legislation that Councillor Bruni mentioned, protecting agricultural use. The exact extent of it I can't say from the top of my head. And of course, from the developer's point of view, no doubt there are earthworks that have to be carried out, and earth and such forth might have to be moved, and if it was moved in a mound running parallel or along the boundary, it might help stop some of the noise from gas guns, and if there was shrubbery, it might help reduce any spray drift should it occur. But then I came to the conclusion that there is a right to make representations within a limited time, and it's now extended to 42 days, by persons that might have an interest in what is being carried on, and the matter will be considered in a venue with expert evidence should the need arise. And if there has to be a decision between competing interests, and there may not have to be, the proper place is for the Tasmanian Planning Commission to have all the consideration of those matters. Now, there may be no representations either for or against, but representatives have their right to make a decision. Now, I've therefore put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. All those against? I declare the motion carried unanimous.
I'm stepping in.
Just one moment, please. Next item on the agenda is my right-hand lady's left. Item 4.2, page 28. Is that withdrawn? No. It's a development application 2020/150 outbuilding addition and change of use in addition to visitor accommodation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Churchill.
I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Planning Scheme 2015 Development Application 2020/150 outbuilding/addition and change of use in addition to visitor accommodation at Picnic Island CT 127120/1 be approved subject to the following conditions. 1 to 6. However, I would also like to add a condition into that, if I may, which could be put in as it's about use, so I guess it should go in as perhaps condition to something. Where would I put that in? Can I have some
Well, you
advice?
can put it in as if it's sequential to A, B, C, D, E, at F, 2F, if you think it's appropriate.
I think it could work as 2F. I think that.
So you want to insert in the type document condition F. What does condition F read, Councillor Churchill?
Just give a copy of it to the executive officer, and then I will read it out.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to add the applicant to provide an activity report on events undertaken in each 6-month period commencing from the date of the first event conducted at the chapel. The report is to be directed to the General Manager, Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, and is to include dates, times and guest numbers for each event under the conditions of use 2A 2B and 2C.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Browning? Now, does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Churchill?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Yes, I would like to speak to the motion. I have issues around this.
Before you go on, Councillor Churchill, there's just mentioning to the gentleman who's just come into the room, item 4.2, development application, 2020 150, outbuilding addition, change of use in addition to visitor accommodation.
So through you, Mr Mayor, Peter Coney joins us in the room. Peter Coney is the author of this report, and certainly is here to answer any questions related to the item.
Welcome, Mr Carney.
Thank you.
Please go on, Councillor Churchill.
Thank you. Perhaps I should give Mr Coney the added conditions.
Yes, no problem. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say that much of what we're seeing here is very hard for anyone to monitor and to actually determine whether the conditions will be in fact abided by. So that's why I've added, or I would like to add, that extra condition, because somehow we need to be able to monitor whether in fact the rules are being played by. And it's very difficult on an island to get a look at this and to see whether conditions are being undertaken properly. The other thing that comes out of all of it is, and it's actually included partly in the use, is the parking issue on land in Coles Bay. This development is going to add, I believe, to the parking stress that is already underway in Coles Bay. And from what I can determine, the current development that's on the island has had no provision for parking in any form previously. Now, that's completely out of our hands, I understand that. But with this new addition coming along, there's potentially 30 guests, plus staff, plus other people who might be supplying services to the island on the 12 days of the year when these events occur, that are going to require parking. And the only allowance that's been made for parking is this one-off $4,200 contribution to parking in Coles Bay. That fee is determined by the fact that it's in Council's fee schedule. So the $4,200 is valid. However, I think perhaps in future this should be a little bit of a warning to us that perhaps $4,200 for this sort of contribution in a place like Coles Bay is nowhere near enough, considering we've just spent in the order of $40,000 per boat trailer parking area, which is about the equivalent of 2-car parking spaces, in Coles Bay. So, in fairness, this contribution, perhaps we should look at it as council, should be raised to something in the order of perhaps $20,000. I'm taking figures that I think are appropriate. So, and I would have liked to have seen or been able to see more provision for more parking for this development, because I do think that it's undersupplied. I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
I forget who the seconder was. Councillor Browning.
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to agree with what Councillor Churchill has said. The parking, I sort of thought about it, and if it's 8 cars with a full complement of people in each car so that's a lot of car parking spaces if you're going to have 30 people. So, I think that the 4,200 and whatever it is, not enough, but that's what we can get, and we need to look at it down the track. And from my recollection of it, it wasn't ever meant to get bigger. The stuff that was happening on Picnic Island was meant to be part of, like keeping the environment, and it just seems to be growing and growing. So I will support this, but, I think what Councillor Churchill's saying about a 6-monthly report's a really good idea.
Anyone wish to say anything further? Yes, Councillor Simons.
Maybe while we've got the planner here, could I ask what his thoughts are on the addition to the motion, the extra the use amendment that we're making?
Yeah, I think it's entirely sensible.
Yep. Okay, and enforceable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, it's simply taking the onus off us to respond to complaints and putting it onto the applicant to demonstrate compliance, but it's no less enforceable because we either will or won't get the report.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
I'm not going to speak necessarily for or against Mayor, but I've got a couple of things I'd like to put to Peter. On page 34, there are some issues in relation to the environmental management zone, particularly in relation to 29.1.1.4 to 6, to recognise and protect highly significant natural values on private land, and concurring with what Councillor Browning's been saying about the incremental development on this island over the years. The next one's to protect natural values in undeveloped areas of the coast, and then we go on to recognise and protect reserved natural areas as great natural assets. I guess I have a concern, and I'll be interested in your views. It says the proposal for a chapel does not actively provide for the protection, conservation or management of Picnic Island's environmental values. So the proposal's not reflecting that. And then down a little bit further, it says the minimal physical disturbance of the site to facilitate the use is considered as offering some protection for values such as penguin nesting areas, by virtue of building in an already disturbed area. But it's also noted that the increased patronage, obviously with 30 people there 12 times a year, there's going to be some impact. So I guess what I'd like to know from your point of view is how those assets and environmental issues are going to be protected if we let this and pass this motion. And what sort of impact, I mean, it's been identified there will be some impact. What sort of impact do you see happening?
Right. So with the 3 criteria that you identified, the last one, recognise and protect reserve natural areas. This Picnic Island isn't a reserve, so that one's struck out. However, certainly it is the purpose of the zone to recognise and protect highly significant natural values and to protect natural values in undeveloped areas of the coast. The purpose of the zone purpose statements, as I've said in the body of this report, are across any piece of land which is zoned environmental management in the municipality. But when we have a discretionary use, we're obliged to look at it to see whether that use, or how does that use respond to the intent of the zone. So that's why, and I'll say it again, the proposed use does not actively promote or protect, rather, environmental values. The only assured protection of environmental values would be to completely lock something away. But then I suppose when you're looking at impact, is that you can have a neutral impact in that it's no better nor is it any worse, And I think that this is the type of development which would have a neutral impact, and that's based on the development being on the existing deck, which has an existing planning permit, and so there is no ground disturbance. The ground disturbance is the trigger for the biodiversity protection layer, and so this overlay is not triggered. And that's an additional sort of protection for environmental values. If that's not triggered, then in my mind, what is the net effect? And that is simply the patronage, and that would be coming down to people not using the duck boards which are on the site, where, however, I do have a condition, and I'm kind of short of hands here. I could muck around with that thing, but I do have a condition about the existing management plan which is on the island, and that existing management plan control and mitigation measures. It's criterion E as part of the use condition. Control and mitigation measures as outlined in the management plan dated June must be observed ongoing for visitors to events. That management plan has on there about the education of people attending the site, that they can't trample all over the site and that sort of a thing. If their guests to the site are observing the stipulations of that management plan, again, I would be of a mind to say that it's a neutral impact. I won't say that it's a positive thing because it's not actively making the site better, but I don't see that it would be contingent on those conditions be any worse. And so in that, in my mind, means that it fits within the purpose of the zone because it's not making it worse.
Just
Yes,
one,
please.
one more question, Peter. In relation to the parking that Councillor Churchill and Councillor Browning have raised, you've identified here in response to one of the performance criteria, the assessment sites and availability of spaces within 400 metres
Yes.
of the collection points. I guess if a bus comes along with 30 people on it, is there going to be enough space for that to park, the bus to park somewhere else and wait, or?
Yeah, I did anticipate buses, and that's why I've got criterion D, which is that transport for guests must only be undertaken in accordance with the strategies outlined in the parking assessment. The parking assessment doesn't mention buses, so the use of buses to be parking across boat trailer spaces is not approved as part of this. The only approval for transport of guests, which we're subject to you approving it, would be what's identified in the parking assessment. That is the use of the aquataxi from collection points and parking in streets identified at the times of the year identified. So Garnet Avenue would not be relied upon for the summer months from memory of the parking assessment. We're approving the application, not what may happen, and I've tied it to what they've applied for.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing that there are no other questions, I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the motion carried with two objectors, Councillor Robinson and Councillor Greenie. All the rest voting in favour. Ms Murray, would you let me know when you've been able to type that down, please? Well, I'll wait till the Deputy Mayor comes in. I don't know why she left. Well, she had an interest in this one. Declared an interest. The next item on the agenda is item, where are we? 4.3.
Mr Mayor, if I may, we
Yes.
should wait until the Deputy Mayor returns,
Correct.
and you need to tell her the outcome.
Oh, I will. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Woods, the motion put with amendment, an extra condition was carried by a majority. Now we're on items 4.3, development application 2020-632 Dolphin Sands Road. Do I have a motion? Where have I got it down here somewhere?
Page 51.
Page 51?
53.
Yes, I thought 53.
53,
Is
sorry,
there-
it's the other way round.
Is there a motion? It's before the agenda, either we're going to deal with it or not deal with it?
Yep.
Yes.
I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015 Development Application 2020/219 for dwelling at 632 Dolphin Sand Road, Dolphin Sands, be approved subject to the following conditions 1 through to 8.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Simons, seconder. Does anyone want to speak to the motion? Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Yes, please, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a straightforward development of a dwelling on a site in Dolphin Sands. And I have to say that on my first occasion as a councillor, the meeting addressed a similar situation, and I'm taking a consistent and constant stand in issues in relation to the height of buildings in Dolphin Sands. I believe that this is worthy of reconsideration of the standard 5 metres. However, I believe that we are here on a discretionary basis to look at the information we're provided with and to represent the community in our decision-making process subject to the Land Use and Planning Approvals Act of 1993. I believe that there is a way to ensure that this dwelling could be provided to the applicant with the form that the applicant prefers without having to contravene the height restrictions of the planning scheme to the extent that it is, at the moment, I believe, some metres over the required height. I understand that there is always some latitude for leverage, and in one instance that I'm aware of, because it was the instance at which I previously opposed a provision for a higher roof, the height of the roof was 9.5 metres above natural ground level. This is, it was originally, I think it was 3 metres was the natural ground level, and the height of the roof was something like 10.75 or something like that. It seems to me that we have to, well, I am feeling as though to represent the community I represent, I need to make a stance and to ensure that it is made clearly aware in the municipality that we can't just ignore a maximum height level to the point where it's grossly, in my opinion, grossly over what could be provided, given minor amendments to the way that the building is constructed. There has already been some modifications arranged, and I appreciate that. I think it was a good move. But I think there's also a possibility to improve the situation by not only looking at the height of the roof, but also looking at the floor levels. The floor levels can be easily amended with the same sort of, ingenuity and engineering prowess that you could change the roof levels. I find that having to decide whether or not 400 millimetres, 1.2 metres, 3 metres or whatever is acceptable, given that the representatives in this instance have clearly indicated that they know what the situation is going to be. I've been on the site and I've seen what it might be, and I can tell you it's getting to the point where I'm just going to have to dig my feet in and say that I cannot support this type of excess above the standard height of 5 metres. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to say anything? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Bruni, but unfortunately I'm in a very difficult situation because as a planning authority we have to consider the planner's comments and the representations and the recommendation. And the recommendation is that with conditions this can be approved. It doesn't necessarily follow that I support the application, but I can't find any valid planning reasons to refuse it. So I'm placed in a particularly difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Simons.
Both Councillor Bruni and Councillor Arnold, I think we are put in a very difficult situation here. We do need to follow the planner's advice, but there does seem to be issues with the heights, particularly in Dolphin Sands at the moment. But unfortunately, I'm in the same position where I can't find a valid reason to oppose it.
Before I ask Deputy Mayor Woods to say something, I'd like, if it's in order, to ask Mr. Koenig something about it. Is the height restriction under the scheme mandatory or discretionary?
The height description is the acceptable solution, and so if a development doesn't immediately comply with the acceptable solution, which if it did, it meant we wouldn't be here for that reason, then it moves over to the performance criteria. So a lot of the time people oversimplify planning to say the acceptable solution is the limit for, 5 metres is the rule for Dolphin Sands. That's not true. 5 metres is the acceptable solution for Dolphin Sands. The rule is really the objective of the standard, in that buildings need to reflect the landscape, so on and so forth. I can't recite the entire thing. We know it will do that if it's 5 metres, but it may be able to do that if it's higher than 5 metres, provided it's citing the general undulating nature of the topography of the site, whereby it may be hidden behind a dune, who adjoins, and that sort of a thing. So for this one particularly, as I viewed it, it will not detract from a person's appreciation of driving along the road. I imagine a person would have to go searching for it if they were walking along the beach by, climbing up the dune to be able to get a good look at it. There is the matter of the property which adjoins to the west. I didn't enter that property, so I couldn't say whether or what impact that would occur, though I know they weren't one of the representors in the representations made. And to the east is an accessway, which is public land. It's a tricky one because, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn in saying this, in that a representation was made where the person wanted to be viewed as an adjoining property owner because of the proximity. But technically speaking, they are not adjoining because they're separated by an accessway, and I simply don't have the latitude to offer them the performance criteria where it says undue impact to adjoining property owners when they're not adjoining. So it really comes down to impact in the landscape. At what level is it obtrusive within the landscape, And so in my report, you'll see I broke down the language in that, well, what is obtrusive? Is it undue? Is a residence in a residential zone undue if it's barely visible? I don't think I can put forward that it is undue, provided we have the amended conditions where the gable end presenting at the access is removed, so that, because that was the largest presentation of bulk in my view. Some people have said, could it be modified further? It may indeed. The time for that could be during an appeal if one were to be lodged. It could be done here right now, but it is my recommendation that it be approved per the conditions I've made.
That if all the buildings in the area were new ones to be constructed were going to be of the same height, would that change the general tolerance of the buildings that you tend to approve?
I did not assess this development necessarily looking at the idea of a precedent, because that is not a consideration in that, you know, is there a precedent for the height as proposed? There is a dwelling that was recently approved that is much higher above natural ground level. However, that was approved because it straddled the peaks of two dunes. So where the envelope follows the dunes, it was quite a bit out of it because the person wanted a level floor level. And so, but looking at the site, you know, was it obtrusive under the performance criteria? We have, with this 5 metre rule, a person could build a 5 metre building at the highest point in their block and it would be compliant. And then a person could build a 6 metre dwelling at the lowest point on their block and it would not be compliant, and we'd be relying on the performance criteria. So performance criteria are very important to be able to look at holistically how does the building sit within the site. This building may well be visible, but I don't believe that the intention is for buildings to be invisible in Dolphin Sands.
Thank you. Councillor Woods, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, actually, no, not now. Simply because our planner has answered the questions or explained the situation to me quite well, and I thank him for that. So, other than that, you can put the motion if no one else has got anything to say.
Are there anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Browning.
Through the Mayor, yeah, I'm sort of, I was one of those councillors with that one of our first council meetings, and I have been told 5 metres isn't 5 metres by planning people before, so it's very tricky, isn't it? And I just hope that people who come here to build think about what they're building. And I hope that our planning department can work with them to try and influence them to be respectful of Dolphin Sands and all our areas, really, because as a planning authority we are in a really tight position, and yeah, so thank you for all the work you do, so thanks.
I'm interested to know, Councillor Browning, was that a speech for or against the motion? You don't have to say until the vote comes, but I'm interested to know.
I'm voting for the motion, but my heart is against the motion.
Yes, Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to make a point, actually,
Please,
not for or against, and I think our plan has clarified some things for me, particularly in relation to what is regarded as obtrusive and what isn't. And just that example you gave across the dunes and the way the house is sort of positioned on a block can relate to whether, you know, it's obtrusive or not, and it's not just necessarily visibility, as you stated in your report. It's, you know, it's how it's positioned and how it's built. So that's put some of my concerns at rest.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Those against? have been all except Councillor Bruni and the Mayor are in favour. Against, the Councillor Bruni and the Mayor are against. I declare the motion carried. Well, I think, Mr. Carney, that finishes you, does it not? Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Until next time, I'm sure.
Thanks, Peter.
Now, the next item, I think.
We need to have councillor Churchill brought back.
I think the next item was withdrawn anyway.
Correct. A request from the applicant.
Okay, I've got to say it again. Okay, I might stand up for a minute. I'm going to sleep and the parts that don't work as well as they ought.
Windows open, you notice?
No, that's fine. I've got two hips, you see, and they're metal. You're not as spongy as some people's hips.
Yes, they shouldn't have said.
Councillor Churchill, the motion to approve the development in which you declared an interest was successful only by a majority. Now, item 4.4 has been withdrawn by council at the request of the applicant, Mr. Well, I won't say his name. The next item, I think, is item.
Move out of a planning authority.
Yes. I'd seek a recommendation that the council no longer acts as or motion no longer acts as a planning authority. Councillor Simon?
I move that council no longer acts as a planning authority at 3:10.
And seconded. Councillor Browning, any discussion? All those in favour, please raise their hand. I declare carried unanimously. Item 5 is financial reports at page 79. Do I have a motion? Councillor Robinson.
That council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended 31st of January 2021.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Arnold. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion or again? I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their right hand. Those against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Item 6 is the next item, page 87, section 24, committees.
Yes. I'll move that council receive the minutes of the Elder Care, section 24, Spring Bay Elder Care Committee meeting held on the 27th of January.
Can I have a second? Councillor Browning, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
Not at all, Mr Mayor, there's so much space.
To speak against it? Do you wish to speak for it?
I just would like to make a comment if I may.
Please make the comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to personally acknowledge and thank Mr John Castle for his dedication and service to this committee. He's done a tremendous job as one of the founding members and I wish him well.
Thank you for that.
If I may.
Yes, please.
If I may,
Councillor
Mayor,
Arnold.
the committee did make, as you would have seen in the minutes, as the chair of the committee, I actually sent Mr Castle a letter with the same sentiments as the Deputy Mayor has just espoused, and I thank her very much for raising that.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. All those in favour? Against? I declare the motion carried. Item 7 on page 92, officers' reports requiring a decision. Now,
Item 7.1.
Son?
Item 7.1.
Item 7.1 is proposed name for a new subdivision at 39 Ribbon Road, Walford. Can I have a recommendation on motion? Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the road approves the name Integrity Way for the new subdivision road at 39 Ribbon Road, Orford.
Is there a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Arnold. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting this recommendation, and it's nice to see that we are not having to go through the issues of compromising the Tasmanian guidelines to name place names. This is the sort of name that warrants support, in my opinion. Thank you.
Anyone against the motion? I put the motion, all those, I'm sorry.
If I may, Mayor, I do apologise. I was contacted by a member of the community with regards to this motion, and they were happy to see it in here because they knew the person well, and it is befitting to have the name Integrity Way in honour of the, I can't remember his name, it's in here, I do apologise. But they were very, very happy to see it, and it fits quite well with the subdivision. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I put the motion, all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. The next item is 7.2, Buckland Walking Trail. Can I have a motion? Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion that I'll put is that council, that the works that have been undertaken for stage 1 of the Buckland Walking Trail be abandoned and the related land, vegetation and flora be reinstated as near as practicable to its original condition, and B, that any future walking trails at Buckland or elsewhere in the Glamorgan Spring Bay municipality are considered in the context of a precinct plan or overall municipal strategic plan.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Churchill. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I spoke at length about this particular project in the December meeting, so I don't want to go over too much of that again, but I will make a few points. This issue has caused great angst in the Buckland community, as we all know, and I think we need to resolve it today. On a funding basis alone, it will be cheaper to reinstate the land and flora as near as practicable to its original condition than to complete and maintain the walking track. As I've previously stated, given the positive progress we've made as a council with the performance improvement directions, operational procedures and essential policy developments, I think we'd be sending all of our communities the wrong message if we were to approve the completion of this poorly proposed development. As our General Manager states in this report, in relation to this proposal, there was limited planning and ineffective community consultation undertaken before the project commenced. And finally, as a council, I feel that we need to demonstrate to our communities our intent to follow proper process. Therefore, I am also including Part B, even though I've altered Part A, in the officer's recommendation as a part of my motion.
Yes, Councillor Arnold.
Mr Mayor, I wonder if I could bring something in here, which I'll probably be accused of bringing in new information, but I would like to see the words "or elsewhere in the Glamorgan Spring Bay municipality" removed. And my reason is very simple. I don't think it's appropriate to include those words in this motion. The motion should only deal with the Buckland Walking Trail. If we want other areas to be dealt with in the same context, then it needs to become a policy decision of council. That is, a separate decision of council on a separate report. I don't believe that we can bury, for want of a better word, the overall walking trail plans in a motion that deals with a specific area.
I'm a bit befuzzed by that, but are you seeking to amend the motion that's being put?
Yeah, I think in the context of this particular motion, Mayor, this motion should only deal with the Buckland Walking Trail and not be clouded with the other, or elsewhere in the Glamorgan Spring Bay municipality. And I think the General Manager, there is an opportunity here for the General Manager to put a policy report to Council to deal with various matters under our strategic plan in a separate report to a future council meeting.
Through you, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
yes, please.
I don't have a problem with Councillor Arnold's recommendation. Both the Director of Infrastructure and myself certainly agree, and I think councillors would agree that we do need to, and the point was made by Councillor just moments ago, that we do need to be more strategic about our planning and our decisions on projects. And that's why that wording appeared in there. It was in more of a general context. I take on board what you're saying, Councillor Arnold's not specific to Buckland. I would be comfortable with it being removed.
Will the
Make
mover of the motion accept the amendment?
I'd like to hear from Councillor
Yes,
Breen
please.
first.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I understand exactly what the issue is, and I do understand that it would be advisable to alter Part B to read as follows, because it links into what my concern is. And B, read that a future walking trail at Buckland be considered in the context of a precinct plan or overall municipal strategic plan. In other words, what that condition indicates is that A, there is a real intent for council to look at the possibility of a walking trail in Buckland, not just palm it off and forget it, but it be looked at in the context of a precinct plan or overall municipal strategic plan. In other words, we avoid the problem that this was dogged with, in that it wasn't looked at in the context of a precinct plan in the first instance, and was not looked at generally the way that council would normally undertake a development application. That's my suggestion, and I wonder whether that's okay.
What do you think about that?
I, if I may, yes, I'd be much happier with Councillor Breeny's suggested B, if our Part B was totally gone, and replaced by Councillor Breeny's suggested Part B. But that, of course, depends on Councillor Robinson. He is the mover of the motion. Otherwise, we have a...
Through you, Mayor, yeah, I'm happy with that, with Councillor Breeny's wording for Part B.
Is that now up on the screen?
You have to get the permission of the second. You have to get the permission of the seconder as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get the permission of the seconder.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
And
Being
if
brought to
if
heel.
I may, Mr Mayor,
Yes.
is it the overall strategic plan, or is it the precinct plans, or is it only the strategic plan?
The precinct plan, in the context of a precinct plan or overall
Yeah,
municipal.
we've actually said that, sorry, I missed that.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it just seems to me that that would be automatic anyway, but that's what the motion is. So I'll put the amending
no.
motion.
No, sorry.
No, I haven't finished yet.
Okay, please go on.
So, Mr Mayor, if I may continue. So I'm in a little bit of a dilemma right now, because I don't support Part A, but I do support Part B. So I'm going to be forced to vote a way that may not necessarily convey my actual reasons for voting.
Would it be in order, and I've asked the meeting's direction, to split the motion? Councillor Churchill?
I don't think it's appropriate to split the motion at this
That's
point
okay.
in time.
That's right.
I don't think that's appropriate. I actually had a lot to say on this whole thing back in the December meeting also, same as Councillor Robinson. And I think this current report gives us really what we most need to know and most get out there to the community, and especially that list of risks involved. This to me makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to go back over what we said in December, but this now works, I believe, very well in terms of the community outcomes and in terms of environmental outcomes, and hopefully in terms of, and we won't know, hopefully in terms of the financial outcomes. So I just wanted to say those things, and I will support the motion as it stands there now.
Now, I'm asked for guidance at the meeting. Do I have to put the amendment to the motion, or is the motion amended by agreement between the proposer and seconder? I'll see noddings. So the motion now is amended. We've heard discussion. I propose to put the motion. All those in favour? Go on, do you want to say? Please?
Because I'm sitting,
No,
because
no,
I'm sitting
speak.
to your right, you
I
don't
haven't
see,
got
so, yeah, no,
ladies'
that's,
peripheral vision.
I'll just go like
They can
that.
see more behind them than men can. A
Thank
physical
you.
fact.
Yeah,
The
look,
vet down the end there will prove it.
thank you, Mr Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I have spoke in support of the walking trail in Buckland. However, listening to the conversation and debate today, I will be in support of this motion. It's important now that we do look at alternative places within the community of Buckland and do this properly the next time.
Definitely.
So I thank Councillor Robinson for his motion, and I thank councillors around the table for their continued debate on this, which we've had for several months now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. General Manager wishes to say something.
Just so the council is aware, just in terms of the motion, the precinct plan, perhaps we should put of a local precinct plan, the word local in front, because it's referring specifically to Buckland. An overall municipal strategic plan is referring to our municipality. So that could be a consideration, and we just need to put plan or an overall municipal. Yeah. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes,
You-
yeah, I'm comfortable
Councillor
with that.
Well,
Greg?
it's now been correctly put on the board the way we want. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the motion carried unanimously.
I wasn't
Was
carried
it?
in it,
Who did not vote?
no. No, did not vote. He did.
Who?
Councillor Simons was
Sorry, I was
against.
just-
I'm sorry, do we go too quickly for you, councillor?
Yeah, sorry, you did.
Should I wait and re-put the motion because you didn't have a chance?
Yeah, sorry, I had a question I wanted to ask, but I'm not sure.
Oh, please
Can I
ask.
have you-
No, can't now.
Oh, well,
The vote's been put.
well, my apologies, I didn't mean to take the rug out from under you.
Yeah, that's all right. I was just reading.
Well, the motion is carried. I don't know whether it was unanimously or not.
6-1.
With one abstention, is that correct to say? Councillor
I
Simon?
didn't put my hand up either way.
All right, an abstention, councillor Simons. I'm sorry for going too quickly.
Not your fault.
Now, the next item is 7.3 Swansea Boat Trailer Parking. Swansea's a lovely matter to consider when it comes to boats, especially getting them into the water. Is there a motion? Yes,
That council note the report advising works will commence before the end of February.
Is there a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Simon. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councillor Brenny.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an inquiry, but I'm not sure who to direct it to.
Don't direct it at me.
Currently, the use of the boat ramp has been severely curtailed by the sand build-up and issues that every boat owner and probably every resident of Swansea is well aware of. And the question I'm being asked in the community is, why do we need a bigger boat ramp when less people are using the boat ramp?
Boat trailer, you mean?
Boat trailer, sorry.
Yeah.
Why do we need
Park.
more parking when less people are using the boat ramp? I think the footprint of this, you know, the counter to that is that overflow parking at busy times when the ramp could be used, which is at very low tide, at very high tide, flows
and in
over
fine weather.
and calm weather, spills over into I think it's Arnold Street, the parking outside of the hub, the Swansea hub. And I am aware that there are no major structural or environmental or whatever constraints to extending it, because most of this area is already degraded anyway. I just wonder whether or not the fact that we're looking to start construction work very soon, before the end of February, without having more of a context of what's going to happen at the boat ramp, I assume the boat ramp then will be fixed.
Thank you very much for that wishful comment. I did say something about that on radio this morning, just reiterating what you said, that the boat ramp apparently can only be used at very high tide and in calm weather to either launch or extract a boat, and some very wise person said, does that mean you have to wait 12 hours before you can come back in if you launch at high tide? I don't know the answer to that. Mr Churchill.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to make the comment that I hope that the community understands that we are actually taking the opportunity to do this work, because if we don't, we will lose that funding. However, this is taxpayer money, and I think we've got to start to take some responsible attitudes to the whole lot of this thing in the future, because it is, with these issues around the boat ramp, it would be reasonable for someone in the community to say, the boat ramp's not working. How do you justify spending $500,000 on that parking area? Regardless of who's raised that money, regardless of whether it's ratepayers or taxpayers, it's public money. And we really have to think around this. I will be supporting the motion, but it's something that I think we've really got to start to think a little bit more about. And while we focus on ratepayers, perhaps taxpayers ought to be included in this when they're paying for all of this. So
Do you mean
just a
spend the money because it's someone else's and spend it quickly in case they want it back?
no, that wasn't quite what I meant. But that wasn't quite what I meant. I mean, that will be the reason that we're probably accepting it. But it would be reasonable to assume that it is perhaps not the wisest expenditure.
I thought that method of consideration when it comes to spending other people's money applied to every government and government instrumentality and instrument. Anyway, yes, Councillor Browning.
Through the Mayor, I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Churchill, but it was in good faith that we applied for this funding, you know, hoping that the boat ramp was going to be working perfectly well. So, you know, I think, yeah, in hindsight, but at the time, it was, you know.
Yes, Councillor Simon.
Well, I agree with what all the councillors are saying. The fact is it's probably an improvement to the area, regardless of whether it gets used for boat trailer parking or not. It's going to be a reasonable area for for the public to park in if there happen to be a change in circumstances, so I think it gets done.
Well, that sounds pretty logical.
Through
The only comment I would make about it, that if you can only go out at high tide, you have to wait till high tide comes again before you can come back in. You might need more parking because the trails over there are a lot longer. General Manager, do you wish to say something?
I think through you, Mr. Mayor, the comments that have been made, are very valid. There's another component to this project that is an improvement, irrespective of the boat ramp functioning 24/7, and that's the turnaround area that is part of this. So it will be formalised, and there will be a greater cul-de-sac head to allow for trailer and boat movements, far more improved than what there is there now.
Thank you very much. I now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their right hand. Against? Carried unanimously. And thank you for the sensible comments about it. Now, the next item is item 7.4, Asset Management Plan, Coastal Infrastructure.
The Mayor, I'll move that Council adopt the Asset Management Plan Coastal Infrastructure and recognise this as a key document in achieving sustainable management of council assets. Once adopted, the plan will be published on Council's website.
Do I have a second? Councillor Robinson. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes.
may, I wonder if the motion should actually say, once adopted, the council is to be published on council's website, rather than will be. I don't know, I just thought.
Well, I'm happy that you amend that. It's only a matter of English expression rather than
It's
change
English
of
expression,
meaning.
I just check the grammar, that's all.
Well,
But
I'm
happy
not
to
good
leave
at
it as it
grammar,
is.
so please alter it.
we might have to ask Councillor Robertson in his
Well, no,
teaching
he would know
capacity.
a lot about that.
As
Headmaster of school, headmaster.
To Councillor Arnold's question, I think will be published is fine.
Is
actually,
fine?
Because we're adopting it,
Yes,
and then once we've adopted, we will publish it.
There's a good mind for you. I
good,
put the
good
motion.
advice, thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, I was just.
All those in favour, please raise their right hand.
Excuse me, point of order, Mayor. Do we have to raise our right hand?
No,
Yes.
left hand, depends on your politics. Please raise your hands. Against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Now, next item.
Thanks, Peter.
Peter.
Thank you very much, Peter. Now, next item is item 7.5, and do we want Mr. Woodward to come and direct planning and development?
Yep, we can do that.
Councillor Robinson, I've got my schoolboy grammar at home. I'm on here, I know, and I have to look it up from time to time, so it's very nice to have your wisdom here. Welcome here, Mr. Woodward, Director of Planning and Development. Item 7.5, Public Open Space Contribution Policy. Is there a motion? Yes, Councillor Simons.
I'd like to move that Council adopts the public open space contribution policy as attached to this report, effective 23rd of February 2021.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Browning. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Seems to be a very wise motion.
More sentiments?
Well, if I put the motion, oh, I'm sorry, please speak up.
I'm going to have to get a
I
paddle.
look, if I was female, I'd be able to say more behind me. I've got greater peripheral vision. That's my wife is very good at backseat driving. It's very handy.
I'd just like to acknowledge the work that Mr Woodward has done with regards to this policy and thank him. It's common sense. It's great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks, Alex.
Well, I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise any hand. Are those against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. A very sensible policy.
Thank you,
Thank
Alex.
you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.
Now, next item. Item 7.6, Emergency Management Coordinator. I've got to find that. That's now. Right, I made that page 103A. Yes.
I'll move that. 1, council nominate Mr Peter Porch as the Municipal Emergency Management Coordinator. His name to be forwarded to the Minister for Police and Emergencies Management via the State Emergency Management Controller as per section 23(1) of the Emergency Management Act 2006. 2, council nominate Mr Darren Smith as the Deputy Municipal Emergency Management Coordinator, with his name to be forwarded to the Minister for Police and Emergency Management via the State Emergency Management Controller as per section 23(1) of the Emergency Management Act 2006. And 3, council recommends the appointments to be for a period of 3 years as per section 23(4) of the Emergency Management Act 2006.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bruni? Councillor Arnold, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, the report is quite self-explanatory. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think there's any need to comment other than to say I hope both gentlemen are happy to take on the roles.
Well, is there any dissension to the motion? Well, if we're going to be all for it, I may as well put it. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried unanimously. Now, the next item is item 7.6, Code of Conduct Panel Determination.
7.7.
7.7.
Sorry, 7.7, yeah, Code of Conduct Panel Determination. Well, there is a late report item, the determination, and I'd ask for a motion. Councillor Robinson, seconded Councillor Brown.
No.
I was Councillor Robinson, please speak to it.
Okay, that council receives and notes the determination report made 18th of February 2021 in relation to the complaint by Mr Jon Kickett against Councillor Rob Churchill.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Browning, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, Mayor, but I think it's important when codes of conduct are taken to this level that we do get some sort of report and information about what's actually happened, and that also that sometimes codes of conduct can, are out of the council domain, out of our realm once they're made, and they go to a commission to have a hearing. It's nice to actually get some feedback on what actually happened and what the complaints were. And I know it's part of the Local Government Act as well to bring it back to council. So I guess I'm pleased to see it's come to us as a report.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Wood.
Thank you. I'll just note that there is a typo on the second page. In summary of complaint on the 10th of November 2021. We haven't even had that date yet, so I dare say that should be 2020.
Thank you very much. That'll be amended. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mayor. On the weekend, there was an elected officers' weekend at run by Legat and Local Government Association Tasmania, and one of the notifications we had with regard to the Local Government Act was review of the Code of Conduct sections of the Act. It was acknowledged by all concerned, every representative there, unanimous, and the management and executive of LGAT, that this review of the Code of Conduct legislation is long overdue. The It wasn't the Director of Local Government Division, but it was a senior executive, I can't recall, I'm sorry, but indicated that the proposed amendments might conceivably reduce the number of codes of conduct annually from figures upward of 300 to figures in the 3s and the 5s, rather than what we experience at the moment.
Could you just be a bit more explicit for my simple
Point of
brain?
order, Mr Mayor, this is introducing new information or new information into an agenda item that isn't actually relevant to this particular agenda item.
It's relevant to a code of conduct. This is a ruling finding unanimously that Mr Churchill had no, Councillor Churchill had no case to answer. It's peripherally relevant, so I'm going to allow it.
Thank you. That was my intention, to relate the fact that it is widespread understood through the industry and local government that the current code of conduct legislation does in fact crop up with issues where, such as this, a person who is subjected to a code of conduct investigation is found to be not guilty of any offence. And that, I think, needs to be made clear to councillors, that there is, in the future, light at the end of the tunnel, that this will be rationalised, hopefully, by the legislation, and let's hope it's improved. I hope it won't be the opposite.
Well,
Thank you.
Let's hope it's right. Thank you very much, Mr Bruni. Councillor Bruni, any other comments? Well, my personal view is, after reading this decision and the dismissal of the complaints, it's very pleasing to see that any councillor from this council that is subject to a code of conduct complaint, it's pleasing to see that's being dismissed, because since I've been on council only for a very short time, I haven't seen any conduct inside council that would warrant a complaint being made. Now, I put the motion that we receive the, I think so it was, receive the report. Is that how it was put?
Just receive and note.
It was noted. The council receives and notes the determination. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declared carried unanimously by those that have no interest. Those that have an interest, such as Councillor Churchill, he did not vote on it.
Thank you.
Now the next item was notices of motion. There are none. That's item 8.
One more.
Late motion.
Sorry, 7.8. Did I miss that? My apologies. Yes, it's replacement of vehicle. 7.8. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Simons.
I'll move that council approves the purchase of one dual cab 4x4 mid-range utility through a capital budget variation of $50,000 and a net profit on sale of assets budget variation of $30,000.
Can I have a second? All those in favour?
No,
Sorry. Councillor Churchill? Yes,
No, it's all right, I was seconding it
that's
too.
all right. Is there any discussion? Or do you want to hear from the General Manager? It's something that's within his ambit, I think.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's two comments I'd like to make. One is a general comment about fleet asset management within Glamorgan Spring Bay Council. It's not one of the asset management plans that Council has discussed and adopted for to date. It is, but it is important that as an organisation that we manage our fleet appropriately, and I think there's a lot of improvements to be made in this space. There's some very clear Australian guidelines, fleet management guidelines, that most fleet operators adhere to. And I'm not going to pass comment on how well we may have done that in the past, but we need to start really making sure that we adhere to guidelines, that we are being prudent with purchases, that we are selling our vehicles in accordance with market values and guidelines, that we're getting optimum trade values when we do sell, that we don't run vehicles as is mentioned in this report to well beyond their optimum trade time, and obviously therefore we don't get the resale that we should be getting. So that's just as a general comment. In relation to this particular item and it coming up, the X-Trail that's mentioned in there is well overdue for replacement. It is a vehicle currently used by a new director, and that is the replacement that I'm seeking. It's not suitable for that director role. In fact, 2 director roles here really would have 4x4s as the norm, given the type of work they undertake. I'm mindful of council's policy, which was set before my time, but the $34,000 limit excluding GST, I'm taking that to be with the trade, which makes for, even though it could be read the other way, which makes for not much vehicle in terms of being able to purchase for $34,000. I am also mindful that council has the authority to go above that, which is the case here. But the $34,000 limit does not really buy a capable 4x4 vehicle in today's market.
Thank you. Does any other discussion or talk about it? Well, I put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Or sorry, raise their hand. Against? Carried unanimously. No, I'm sorry I was premature in going on to notices of motion. I think there were none. That's item 8. Item 9, petitions. There were none. Item 10, questions without notice from councillors. There was a question from Councillor Arnold. And do you wish me to read the question out?
No.
Not at all. Mr Mayor, I'm happy with the outcome. Thank you. And the community members that have raised the issue of not being able to see the performance improvement direction are certainly pleased with the outcome.
Well, there is a response from the General Manager. The next item is...
No, we've still got to do this. Are there any more?
Are there any more questions without notice from councillors?
Yes,
Yes,
Mr Mayor, I do. My question follows the Deputy Mayor's question at our last meeting in relation to the attendance of the public at council meetings, and taking account of the General Manager's response in relation to the capacity of this chamber. My question relates to the purchase of microphones last year that could be used in the Tribunal Hall for council meetings, noting that we did hold at least one meeting in that hall at the very beginning of COVID restrictions. So my question is, to enable the return to public attendance at meetings, is there any reason why the motion of council in April 2017 to live stream meetings could not be deferred during the COVID era and meetings be held in the Tribunal Hall where there is sufficient space for public attendance and the facility to record the meeting?
Do you have that on?
I do have that
form?
typed out, and
Thank
I will
you.
email it to Miss Murray.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
I'd like to take
That question. It's an interesting question. I look forward to the answer.
Is that's directed through you, Mr Mayor, at me? Yeah,
Yes.
I'll take that question on notice. But can I just make a comment that if we can reliably live stream meetings from any of our halls, that will certainly be investigated.
Mr Mayor, if I may, we can't. That's the issue, General Manager. We can't live stream, but we purchased a multitude of very powerful microphones to enable the meetings to be recorded, and then they were uploaded to the YouTube platform a couple of days later in an audio version only. And that's what I'm asking. But the link is, we moved a motion in April 2017 to live stream our meetings. So I'm thinking that what we'll have to do is somehow or other move a motion to defer that during the COVID era, to defer live streaming during the COVID era.
Through you,
Sorry,
Mr Mayor.
Happy for you to take it on notice,
I'll
Mr
take it
General
on notice,
Manager.
but I'm also just mindful of the rapidly changing COVID environment, and perhaps in a month or two, with the vaccination rollout, things could change quite quickly in regards to current restrictions.
That's fine, no
Well,
problem.
thank you very much.
Can I add to that?
Yes,
just a
please.
little bit as far as
Yes,
when you're
councillor
looking
Simon,
at it,
please.
is there an opportunity then to actually have council meetings in some other parts of the municipality? Because that seems to have been on a lot of people's mind for a long, long time now. And if we've got that equipment, there's probably no reason why we couldn't do that in Swansea as
Or
well,
Bicheno.
or occasionally in Bicheno.
If I may, Mayor, though, the problem with that is this motion that says we live stream. We can't live stream from the halls.
No, but if we unwind that motion.
If we unwind that a little bit for a period of time, yes, agreed.
Well, now, unless there's any more business, I seek a motion that the meeting be closed.
Don't need a motion. You-
Oh, well, if that's the case, I declare the meeting closed at 4:51 PM.
3:50.
It is 3:51 too, we're quick. Now, there's the annual general meeting at 5:30. Please don't go home, stay here, we need you.